Hello and welcome to the Career Speakeasy, a casual, fun, and irreverent place to share ideas about career development, the world of work, and life in general. I'm your host and proprietress, Kelly Nottingham. Growing your career should not be boring. So come on in, pull up a chair, and pick your poison. Hi, everybody. I recently had a conversation with my stepdaughter who is in her senior year of college. She's getting ready to graduate and move on to the next phase of her life. And in the course of our conversation, talking about what her plans were for the next big phase, it made me think about a topic that we've discussed a little bit on some of our previous podcasts, but we haven't really dug into in depth yet. So this podcast is all about change management. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the emotional and psychological sides of change that we go through based on the work of Dr. William Bridges in his book, Managing Transitions, Making the Most of Change. Now, if you are interested in this topic and digging into it further, I highly recommend this book. It talks to leaders especially and people in an organization maybe that are going through a lot of change. But I find the book is very helpful for people who may not be in leadership roles, people who are just in general dealing with a lot of change and trying to figure out how to manage it effectively. Now, we've spent several of our last podcasts talking about layoffs specifically, talking about a lot of the changes that are going on in the world right now during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've got a lot of people who are struggling with a lot of change and the emotions that go along with that change. So yes, this podcast can be relevant for people that are dealing with those big, humongous changes like that. But it can also be useful for those of you who may be feeling an itch to do something a little bit different. Maybe you feel like you're in a rut, but you're not sure how to really let go of the old way of doing things and move into the new way that you want to think about doing things. So we're going to jump right in with a couple of definitions. So the way that Dr. Bridges defines change and transition. Change is situational. Change is the thing that happens to us externally, happens to us. So let's say that we're getting ready to move. We're going to move to a new city. The change is itself the move to the new city. The transitions are all of the psychological pieces that we go through as we adjust from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. And if you've ever been through any major changes in your life, which I'm sure everybody has at some point or another, the roller coaster of change that we go through in our daily lives, you will note that usually it's the transition stuff that really starts to bog us down. It's the transition, that emotional or psychological piece that really starts to cause a lot of issue for us, because a lot of times we deal with the practical sides of stuff because it's easier and it's cleaner to deal with than the mushy psychological stuff that comes along with it. So, for example, in our move to our fabulous new home, we have all of the stuff that we have to do to let go of the current life that we have. So we need to get rid of our current apartment. We need to cancel our internet service. We need to cancel our gym membership. We then have to figure out what the new is going to look like. So finding a new job and all the steps that go along with that. Finding a new place to live and all of the steps that go into getting our stuff from point A to point B. And finding a new gym, finding a new coffee shop we want to go to. Those are the practical sides of moving. But the transitional sides are all of the pieces that float around that can cause us a lot of stress, anger, frustration, depression, anxiety, sadness, etc. We're going to be talking about each of those. So we've got here point A and point B. We think about point A as where we are now. Point B is where we're going to go. And a lot of times when we're discussing changes in our lives, that's what we think about. We think about where we are and where we want to go. What we often don't think about is that middle piece in between, where we're in between doorways, if you will. We're in between one room of our life and the next room of our life. And there is a moment in a doorway where we may have one foot in the old and one foot in the new, but we ourselves, the rest of our bodies, are in between. We're not in either room, right? When we look at the way that we deal with transitions, Dr. Bridges breaks it down into 3 phases. The ending and losing and letting go phase. That's the room that we were in, and the old patterns, the old identity that we had. It's our comfort zone, right? That is the ending, losing, letting go, that we have to grieve for it. We have to be willing to open up our hands and let go of the grip that we've had on those old things as we start to step through that doorway. The doorway, he calls the neutral zone. This is that in-between period where we're realigning. He calls it repatterning. And by repatterning, we mean breaking apart all of the old patterns, all of our comfort zone pieces of our lives, all of our old identity that we maybe had in, let's say, that city that we're moving away from, figuring out how to pull all that apart and mush it back together into a new shape that we can take into the new beginnings phase, which is the 3rd phase of these 3. So the new phase are our new identities, our new patterns, our new purpose, what we're doing there, and the way forward. So 3 phases: the ending, losing, letting go phase. The second is the neutral zone. And the 3rd is our new beginnings. This door example is my example. That's not Dr. Bridges' example, just to clarify. But to me, that's a way of thinking about the way that we do change, because we're coming out of one room as one person. We're stepping through that threshold and we become a new person on the other side. We may have 99% of the same stuff. We may only have 70% of the same parts of ourselves that we're taking through that doorway. But it's within that frame of the door that these changes happen, that we realign everything, that we're in what in the sociological world we call the liminal phase, where you're neither A or B. You're this amalgam of in between, yeah? So what I'd like to do for the rest of this podcast is to talk a little bit about each of these 3 phases, what they represent, what they feel like, and what we can do to help ourselves get through each of these. Because when we're thinking about change, a lot of times we think about the change starting and then ending. We can instead flip that around and say a change means that we are ending the current way of doing things, and we are working through to begin the new way of doing things. Sometimes that's a little bit of a helpful cheat to think about, because this first phase is all about ending. It's all about letting go. And this can be hard. One of the largest challenges with this ending, losing, letting go phase is realizing that your comfort zone is going away. A lot of times we don't even realize how big our comfort zone is and how settled into it we are until something changes and we realize that we have gotten that little groove on the couch that we sit in every day and we are so comfortable there. And then all of a sudden we realize we're not going to have that couch anymore. Our groove is gone. We've gotten into a rut. That rut is going away. And so sometimes we can feel very lost in this phase. Some of the emotions that we deal with most commonly in this ending, losing, letting go phase feels a lot like the phases that people go through when they're dealing with grief, when they've lost a person in their lives. Lately, I've been having a lot of conversations with former colleagues who have lost their jobs due to the pandemic and the changes in the economy that have happened because of it. There are other folks who have had to change their work. They've had to change the role that they're in to continue to be working for the same company so that they still have gainful employment, but it's a whole different job, a whole different role that they're involved in. This phase, this ending, losing, letting go phase, really, really shows up when people are going through situations like this. So let's, as an example, let's say that we have a major change that's happening at our job. I know this is so hard to imagine right now with everything going on. We have a major change going on, and we have 6 coworkers that we are watching. We're watching how they handle this, and each one of these people represents a different reaction, a different emotion in this ending, losing, letting go phase. So our first coworker, we're going to call her Angry Amy. Angry Amy is lashing out at people. She is trying to blame other people for what's going on. She's blaming the economy. She's blaming everybody under the sun for the problems that she's having to now deal with. And she has started to get super resistant to doing what she needs to do to get the work done. In a sense, she's actually sabotaging what everybody else is trying to get accomplished through this change because she's saying, I refuse to do this. I don't want to do this. This is dumb. And she sits there in the corner, angry. Now, Angry Amy here, she may have this lashing out show up in 2 ways. The first is that she will very vocally tell everybody and their brother what is wrong, making sure that people understand her frustration, people want to hear what she has to say in her mind, and what she's doing is she's looking for other people to be angry with her. She may also be a mumbler, and I know you know who I'm talking about, the person that sits in the meeting with their arms crossed, and they look frustrated and angry, and they're scowling. And the leader says something in the meeting, and you hear Angry Amy going, and the leader says, I'm sorry, Amy, did you have something you wanted to say? Nope. And she refuses to share what she's thinking, what she's feeling, what she's processing. Again, she's looking for other people to be frustrated with her, because if other people are frustrated, it proves her right. Now, next up, we have Bargaining Barney. I am just making these names up as I go, and I'm coming up with some interesting names here. Bargaining Barney looks at the situation that's going on, and he says, okay, but if we just tweaked the process that we were doing, we won't have to go through all of this change. If we don't have to change that much. We can just do this a little bit differently. Just give us another chance to do it the old way, so we don't have to try to learn this new way of doing it. That's what Bargaining Barney is doing. That's what bargaining looks like. It's problem solving, but it's kind of fake problem solving because it's not actually focused on the new that the group is moving into. Our next colleague is Anxiety Andre. Anxiety Andre is having a tremendous amount of fear of the unknown. He is struggling with being concerned about the difficulty of having to change things, and it's causing these feelings of not being able to sit still a lot, feeling heart palpitations, feeling stomach upset, getting headaches a lot. And poor Anxiety Andre is saying things like, this is never going to work. We always try these things and it never works. And we are going to end up broke, and we're going to end up with the whole team falling apart, and the company is going to fall apart. Disaster, the sky is falling. So that is Anxiety Andre. Our next colleague is Sadness Sadie. Poor Sadness Sadie is just feeling weepy, reminiscing about what used to be, recalling the good times that were in the past and maybe forgetting that there were some bad times in the past too, but focusing so much on everything that is going to be going away that she can't actually even really look up to see that there might be some interesting possibilities in the new way that we're going to go. Our next colleague, 5 out of 6, is Disorientation Danny. Poor Danny. He is suffering with confusion. He walks into a room and forgets what he's supposed to work on. He forgets to come to meetings. He forgets assignments that he was supposed to do. And when you ask him questions about a topic, when you ask him questions about a project, you're like, what are you talking about? And he can't sometimes remember what you're discussing with them or what you just talked about with him yesterday. Disorientation Danny feels a little bit like he's losing his mind because he's getting so forgetful and he's so confused, and his brain is basically just not able to process all that's going on right now. The last of our 6 colleagues and their emotional states is Depression Debbie. Depression Debbie is tired all the time. She is sitting in her office. She just feels very deflated and very flat. The aspect of her face is slack. You don't see the energy level that you normally see because normally Debbie is delightful Debbie. And right now she just can't seem to get herself going. She may be calling in sick more often. She may be leaving early and just doesn't seem to have any energy. So that was a quick, kind of silly look at the 6 major emotional reactions that people go through in this ending, losing, letting go phase. So I'm going to run through them again, just to remind you. The first is anger. The second is bargaining. The third is anxiety. The fourth is sadness. The fifth is disorientation. And the sixth is depression. Now, what's fascinating about this is that we can feel all of those emotions in a day. We can feel them back and forth. It's not like we sit in one and we're sitting in anger the whole time that we're dealing with ending and losing and letting go of the current way of doing things. We actually may sit in anger for a couple of hours and then we move into anxiety mode, and then we move into disorientation mode, and then we move into sadness mode. So we can move through these different phases of emotions as we're dealing with this process of letting go of our old patterns, our old identities, our old way of doing things. There is nothing wrong with feeling these different emotions. There's nothing wrong with it. The challenge for us is to not let these emotions take hold of how we are able to move through this change process and this transformation from being at point A, going through our neutral phase, to being in point B. So we have to find the balance between allowing ourselves to process those emotions and feel those emotions without letting them sabotage what we need to do. And that's a fine line. It is a very fine line. It takes a lot of self-awareness to know and to, frankly, to admit that we are feeling angry today and this is why, or we're feeling disoriented and it's okay to feel disoriented, but what can we do to start to process through and move through that? When you start to deny that you're feeling these emotions or these phases that you may be stuck in, you're not actually fixing them, you're just prolonging them. You know, it's kind of like when you have an old cabbage in your fridge and you see the cabbage and you're like, ooh, I really need to throw that out. But instead of like actually handling it and taking it and looking at it and realizing that it is bad and then throwing it away, we just push it into the back of the fridge. You know what I'm talking about here? And at some point, we're going to have to deal with that cabbage, y'all. So let yourself feel some of these feelings, but please make sure that it's not impacting your professionalism. It's not impacting your work product as much as possible. Talk to your leader if you need to. Talk to some of your coworkers. Just make sure that you're not enabling any of their frustration or their bargaining or their anxiety or disorientation or sadness. What I have found personally is that a lot of these feelings that we go through in this ending, losing, letting go phase are related to a lack of feeling of control. People who have more control over the change that's happening are going to move through these transitional phases faster because they have more control over the situation. For a lot of us who are dealing with the repercussion of other people's decisions, it makes that control feel very, very, very small. And that in itself will cause a stronger emotional reaction from us. It is harder to let go and walk through that ending phase when you are being pulled by somebody else than it is when you are able to take that step for yourself. So the lesson we can learn from this is that we need to identify the things that we have control over. looking very openly at what is going to change and what is going to be the same. What can we control? Now, there may be times where we can't control anything but ourselves and our reactions to things. That's still something to control. Often we will find that there is actually more that we control than we give ourselves credit for. So that is one way to help us work through some of this ending, losing, letting go phase. What is our comfort zone? What is our new comfort zone going to look like? How have we identified ourselves in the place where we are now? And what about that is going to potentially change, but what about it will be the same? A lot of this stuff comes down to the core of who we are on the inside. So here's an example. Let's say that you are a person who is a software expert at the software that your team uses, and you have always been the expert at this. You were in it from the beginning when you got this software 10 years ago, and everybody comes to you with questions. When your leader announces that you're going to a totally new software program, you may feel a tremendous loss of identity because your expert status is now gone. It's gone. It's gone. And you are going to be a newbie just like everybody else. That can be extremely unsettling. But you do have control over the fact that you learn software quickly, you enjoy training people on software, and you understand the processes behind the work that your group does really, really well. So you're going to be able to transfer the knowledge that you had in many ways into this new software. It's a different way of thinking about that loss of identity. It's identifying what pieces you're going to be able to take with you into your new identity. Ta-da! Okay, so that was our first phase, our ending, losing, letting go phase, that grieving phase where we're getting rid of our old patterns. The next phase is the neutral zone. This is that doorway. While we're in the doorway, we're neither in our old identity or our new identity. We're not in the old rut, but we're not yet in the new rut. A lot of times this neutral zone, we just try to blow through it at 100 miles an hour. This is the way it was. This is the way it is now. I'm just jumping straight in and I'm going to handle it as quickly as possible and not really think about what's happening. We're just going to jump right into the new. But the neutral zone is where all of the true transition happens. This is where all of those pieces are broken out and they're put together into a new configuration, maybe getting rid of some pieces, maybe bringing in some new pieces to create a new future that's that new beginnings phase. But we can't create the new without disassembling the old. And so this is where all of that happens in this neutral zone. When you are in the neutral zone, you will still be processing a lot of these same emotions. It's perfectly normal to go through that and to cycle through. You may also find that you get re-angry or re-sad or re-anxious if the changes keep coming, because sometimes they do. That's the pace of the world that we live in nowadays, is you get rid of one change and immediately another one hits. So we may cycle through these emotions multiple times as we're in this neutral zone and we're trying to make sense of all of this stuff that's going on to put it into a more cohesive image for ourselves so that we can move into that new room from our doorway. In this phase, expect to feel weird. Expect to feel that you're not very productive. Expect to feel like you just can't get a whole lot done. You're trying, but things just aren't happening as fast as you want. That is normal in this phase. The other thing that will often come up in this phase is the baggage that you are bringing from other situations that you have dealt with, or maybe other situations that you never really did deal with. You're going to bring those into this neutral zone, and boy, you are going to feel them. In a previous podcast, I mentioned that I had been laid off several times. One of the times that I got laid off, the first time I got laid off, it was a shock. And I had to go through this ending, losing, letting go, neutral zone, new beginnings. I got into my new beginning. Everything seemed fine. I got laid off again. That time, I realized that I was bringing a lot of baggage with me about distrust of people in authority. And it kept rearing its head up very subtly in the back of my mind. And for a while, I didn't actually realize that that was even there until one day I just happened to catch that thought going through my head. So if you have been through a similar situation in the past that you are getting ready to go through now, know that you may be bringing some baggage with you. If a previous change that you went through ended up being a little bit more stressful than you were expecting, or let's say that you got let go from a job and you started a new job right away and that job also just sucked, and then you had to go through the process of finding another job. That storyline that you have in your mind about what happened comes with you. And in this neutral zone, you may find that information and that storyline really playing out in your head over and over again subconsciously. So look for your baggage, let's find your baggage, and let's unpack it a little bit so you don't have to take it with you into this new life. A couple of ways to work through this phase. One is to identify what was working and what wasn't in your former existence, right? In that room that you're walking out of, what was working and what wasn't working. You can brainstorm about some ways to fix the things that were not working going forward. And this is especially relevant if it's about things that are inside you, and you specific. So maybe, let's say in your last job, you loved the work, but you hated the fact that you didn't have a lot of work-life balance. You can identify what you loved about the work, what you're going to be taking with you from that into your new life, but also looking at how can I fix this work-life balance issue going forward, because that's something that I obviously had not figured out in my previous work, yeah? You can set at this point easy, short-range goals focused on what you can control. This is honestly one of the biggest challenges I think of this stage, is that people want to set these humongous overarching goals about what my life is going to look like. And I'm not saying that that's wrong to do. It's not wrong to want to set larger goals. The challenge is sometimes when we're in this neutral zone, we're already having so much to deal with that we can't necessarily step into a 5-year plan, right? We need to focus on the 30-day plan and the 60-day plan, because we may still be going through that disorientation, we may still be anxious, we may be angry. And setting those little short-term goals gives us something that we can immediately control. That's going to help us. It also gives us something to celebrate, which is important, that we feel like we are making forward progress, even if the progress in any other situation would feel very, very small. When we're in the neutral zone, those little baby steps can be the way that we start to move ourselves forward. So embrace the baby steps. Focus on what you can control and build some short-term, easy goals to get yourself there. Allow yourself to feel whatever it is that you're feeling, pulling in that baggage, becoming aware of the baggage, but don't feed that feeling to the point where you're not actually dealing with it. Okay, I live on the outskirts, the far outskirts of Houston, Texas. I have lived in Atlanta and I have lived outside of Denver. So y'all, I have dealt with some traffic in my lifetime. When you're in a situation like rush hour in Atlanta and you're on the 75-85 corridor and somebody has a car accident and it blocks up traffic, you get angry about it. You may spend the rest of the day piling on the anger about other things that you have seen throughout the day or other things that are bothering you, and you're heaping that feeling on top over and over and over again. You're feeding the feeling. That kind of piling on feeling only deepens, and it doesn't actually help anything. Feel what you're feeling and then let it go. And I know that's so much easier said than done. But this is a practice. So feel the feelings, but don't feed the feelings. And that goes into the same idea of not trying to force the solutions too fast, because you're going to be creating for yourself a new comfort zone. Probably I'll end up doing a podcast someday on comfort zones because they're actually really fascinating. We're creating for ourselves a new comfort zone, but we run the risk of not identifying ruts that we got into before and carrying those ruts with us. This ties back into that same idea of what do we want to change about going forward? What can we be creative about going forward? Because when we break up our routines, we may find a great opportunity to identify, like, wow, I was really in a rut with this, and maybe I do want to try something different. Maybe I do want to try something new. And again, that gives you some modicum of control so that you can feel like you're progressing and moving forward. So that's a look at our neutral zone. Once we get through the neutral zone, we move into our new beginning phase. This is where we start our new comfort zone, we start our new identity, we start our new way of living. We have new patterns and we have new purpose. So a great thing to do as you're moving out of that neutral zone and into your new beginning is to identify what your new identity is and what it is going to be. You may have been an expert in an old software program that your company's using. What is your new identity going to be? Are you going to be the new expert in the new system that they're using? Or are you going to branch out and do something totally different? Do you want to learn a new set of skills and be the sales expert for your team? Whatever the case may be. Just know that you may waver a little bit on your identity until that identity is set. You may find that it's going to take a little bit of time for that identity to kind of congeal in your life. So be patient with yourself. You can also create your new purpose, whether it's big or small. What is that going to look like? One thing that I like to do for this, because I'm a very visual person, is I create a little clip art or photo montage on my computer. I like to do this in PowerPoint because I can kind of move things around in PowerPoint, but you can do it in whatever system you want to do it, whatever program you want to do. Find slogans that you like. Find pictures or words that represent what your new life is going to look like and what your new beginning is going to look like. Arrange it, put it up where you see it. Put it up as your phone background, as your desk background. Print it out and put it up on your wall. Whatever you need to do to remind yourself of what your new life is going to be like, what your new identity is. And that will help you to internalize it more. Go ahead and look at your calendar in this new beginning phase. Identify dates on your calendar that are big dates for you, milestones for you as you start to build this new life. So we used an example at the very beginning of moving to a new city. Our ending, losing, letting go is saying goodbye to our friends there, making sure we can keep in touch with them, driving around to all the places that we used to love to go to, saying goodbye to them, whatever that means for you, letting go of this is who I was in this place. We go into our neutral zone where we're walking around, we don't know where we are, we don't know which coffee shop is the best, we don't know a lot of people, and we're struggling with figuring out public transportation in this new city. We're in that weird phase of trying to figure out what our new life is going to look like, what our new normal is going to look like, and what our new habits are going to look like. In the new beginning phase, we can start to find new purpose step by step, identifying new things we want to try, places we want to go, setting dates and milestones on our calendars, like you have lived in your new city for 1 month. You've lived in your new city for 2 months. And appreciating the fact that you've made new friends, appreciating the fact that you found a gym that you really like, appreciating the fact that you found a new park to take your dog on a walk to. Those little milestones like that can help to solidify the new patterns that you're creating in your life. And it does give you a sense of control and comfort to realize that you are moving forward. Sometimes when we do these things, we don't realize how quickly we get into these new ruts, these new patterns, these new routines. I use the word ruts in both a negative and positive way because ruts can be great. They're the easy track that we can take through our daily lives as long as they're taking us to where we want to go, right? As we are looking at our new life, we're looking at those milestones that we have started to create in this new identity. We can also see what's working and what's not. And if we find in our new life that we're not overly happy with the way that blank is working, we have enough self-awareness still at this point to be able to change the way that we're approaching that, try something different, have a plan B. And honestly, going ahead and figuring out what your what ifs and plan Bs are as you're getting into the groove of your new life, again, will help you feel some sense of control over what's happening. So let's say that you've moved to your new city. You're looking to meet a group of like-minded friends, and at your previous home, you had a lot of friends through the jiu-jitsu school that you used to go to. You have said goodbye to those friends, and into your new beginning phase, you think to yourself, I want to meet a new circle of people. I have found a jiu-jitsu place. I'm going to go there and see what the people are like there, see if I like the way they teach, and maybe that's where I can meet my new group of friends. You try it out, you go there for about 3 or 4 weeks, and you just don't get a very good feeling there. If you have a plan B, to plant that seed in your head that you are not in a routine yet, you can say, I'm going to try a different jiu-jitsu school. Maybe instead I'm going to take judo, and we'll try that instead. I have options to try to meet different people, and I'm going to take those options while everything is still fresh and nothing's really solidified yet in my routines and in my daily life. Think about, in this new beginning phase, how you can be flexible to find what you've identified that you want your new life to look like. Where can you flex and bend, and where on your calendar are you going to put some milestones to say, by this time, I want to have gone out and met some new people, or by this time, I want to have found a new professional association that I can join, so that you don't fall into what I like to think of as accidental living, where we end up being in life for years without consciously being in our lives. The last thing I'd like to mention about the new beginnings phase and about setting milestones is to identify for yourself what success looks like in your new life, and marking for yourself on your calendar check-ins with yourself. How am I doing? Am I getting anywhere on these new goals that I've set for myself? Am I moving toward what success looks like for me? Maybe I need to readjust what success looks like for me because I've decided not to pursue plan B anymore, and now I'm going to go to plan C. Put that on your calendar, even if it's just a happy little reminder on your calendar every month to do a quick check-in with yourself. If you're a journaler or you have like a written planner book, at the beginning of every month, you can jot down a quick note, quick bullet points of ways that I'm moving toward my new identity, ways that I'm moving fully into my new beginning, to kind of keep it front of mind, because we do get often caught up. Once we've gotten into the new beginning phase, we're basically trying to get into our new normal so quickly that we don't give ourselves the flexibility to unpattern that new reality and piece it back together in a different way if we aren't 100% happy with the way that it's going. So the new beginning phase is, it's a beginning. It is not the end. It is the start of the new. It's stepping into that next room and opening up into this wider space, this different space that you've maybe never been in before, but it's just the first step into that room. So you have lots of opportunities inside that new space to figure out where you want to go. Think about that. Make it a conscious choice for yourself, what you want that new beginning to look like and what you want those next steps to look like. You don't have to, form it out and carve it into stone, but having the flexibility built in to say, this was my plan, I'm changing my plan a little bit, and I'm going to try this and see if this works better because I want to create those good ruts for myself. So now that we have talked about the 3 phases in Dr. William Bridges' Managing Transitions book, Ending, Losing, Letting Go, Neutral Zone, and New Beginnings, we've talked about the fact that we go through a lot of different emotions when we are dealing with transitions from point A to point B, and that middle phase is where we deal with a lot of breaking things down and putting them back together. The fact that feeling a sense of control can help us. Let's talk about some things that you can take with you from this podcast to help you as you move into your new point B. So for this last call, I have 4 things for you to think about. Number 1, what are you letting go of? What is going away in whatever this change is that you're dealing with? Number 2, what are you gaining in this change? Number 3, what is your new identity, or what do you want it to be? And number 4, what is one thing you can control, and what are you going to do about it? There's a song that I love. I'm going to date myself a little bit here. It's a song by REO Speedwagon called Roll with the Changes. Love this song. If you are not familiar with REO Speedwagon, you need to do a quick Google search and listen to this song, because this is one of my favorite quotes about change. Because sometimes we hold on to things in our current situations that we don't even like that much, but we hold on to them because they're comfortable. So this quote is in the song, Roll with the Changes. Quote, "If you're tired of the same old story, turn some pages." End quote. And that's what this whole podcast has been about, is turning over a new page. We have to let go of the one page to be able to turn on to the next page and read it. It can be a little bit scary. It can also be awesome. There's a lot more to change management than we've been able to discuss in this little bitty bit of time that we've had today. I guarantee I'm going to be doing more podcasts on change management, because this is something that is near and dear to my heart, and something that the world is definitely dealing with on a much faster pace than we used to. So good luck with everything. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on email and on social media. Subscribe, share with your friends if you have anybody that you think this would be helpful for them to hear. And take care, you guys. Bye. Well, thanks for joining me. If you have suggestions, feedback, or just something random you want to share, email me at careerspeakeasy@gmail.com. And come visit again soon. Cheers.